Hello, and welcome. You're listening to part 4 of our Greek mythology sleep series. And tonight, we journey alongside one of the greatest heroes of all time, Heracles, also known as Hercules. Through calm narration, we'll explore the story behind his divine origins, the wrath of Hera, and the legendary 12 labors that shaped his fate. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapters of this mythological journey. Now, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let yourself drift into the world of ancient legends. Heracles is Greece's greatest hero. Originally, he was considered a sun god who struck down all that was dark and evil with his unerring arrows, a god who healed and sent disease. He had much in common with the god Apollo, but Hercules is a god and hero found not only among the Greeks. We know of many similar hero gods. Among them, the Babylonian Gilgamesh and the Phoenician Melkart are particularly interesting, as the myths about them influenced the myths about Heracles. And these heroes traveled to the ends of the earth, performed great deeds, and suffered just like Heracles. Poets of all times have constantly used the myths about Heracles. Their attention was drawn to the feats and sufferings that befell Heracles. On a starry night, we can see Heracles, under his Roman name Hercules, in the sky, as one of the constellations is named after him. And next to the constellation Hercules, we see the constellation Hydra, the monstrous, multi-headed Hydra that Heracles killed. The myths about Hercules are based on the tragedies of Sophocles, the Trachiniae, and Euripides' Heracles, as well as on the legends mentioned in Pausanias's description of Greece. The birth and upbringing of Hercules. King Electryon ruled in Mycenae. The Teleboans, led by the sons of King Pterelaios, stole his cattle. The Teleboans killed Electryon's sons when they tried to recover the stolen cattle. King Electryon then announced that he would give the hand of his beautiful daughter Alcmene to whoever returned his cattle and avenged the death of his sons. The hero Amphitryon managed to return the herds to Electryon without a fight. As the king of the Teleboans, Pterelaios entrusted the stolen herds to the king of Elis, Polyxenos, who gave them to Amphitryon. Amphitryon returned Electryon's herds and received Alcmene's hand in marriage. Amphitryon did not stay long in Mycenae. During the wedding feast, in a dispute over the herds, Amphitryon killed Electryon, and he and his wife, Alcmene, had to flee from Mycenae. Alcmene followed her young husband into exile only on the condition that he avenge the sons of Pterela for the murder of her brothers. Therefore, upon arriving in Thebes to King Creon, with whom Amphitryon found refuge, he set out with an army against the Teleboans. In his absence, Zeus, captivated by Alcmene's beauty, appeared to her in the guise of Amphitryon. Soon, Amphitryon returned. And so, Alcmene was to give birth to twin sons by Zeus and Amphitryon. On the day when the great son of Zeus and Alcmene was to be born, the gods gathered on high Olympus. Rejoicing that his son would soon be born, Zeus, the shield-bearer, said to the gods, "Listen, gods and goddesses, to what I have to say. My heart commands me to say this. Today a great hero will be born. He will rule over all his relatives, who trace their lineage back to my son, the great Perseus." But Zeus's wife, the majestic Hera, angry that Zeus had taken the mortal Alcmene as his wife, decided to use cunning to deprive Alcmene's son of power over all the Perseids. She hated Zeus's son even before he was born. Therefore, hiding her cunning deep in her heart, Hera said to Zeus, "You are lying, great thunderer. You will never fulfill your word. Give me a great, unbreakable oath of the gods that the one who is born today, first in the Perseid family, will rule over his relatives." The goddess of deception, Athena, took control of Zeus's mind, and, unaware of Hera's cunning, the thunderer gave an unbreakable oath. Hera immediately left bright Olympus and rushed to Argos in her golden chariot. There she hastened the birth of the son of the godlike wife of Perseus, Sphene, and on that day, a weak, sickly child, the son of Sphene, Eurystheus, was born into the family of Perseus. Hera quickly returned to bright Olympus and said to the great thunderer Zeus, "O Zeus, father of thunderbolts, hear me. A son, Eurystheus, has just been born to the Perseid Sphene in glorious Argos. He was the first to be born today and must rule over all the descendants of Perseus." The great Zeus was saddened, for now he understood all of Hera's deceit. He was angry with the goddess of deception, Athena, who had taken control of his mind. In his anger, Zeus grabbed her by the hair and cast her down from the bright Olympus. The ruler of gods and men forbade her from appearing on Olympus. Since then, the goddess of deception, Athena, has lived among men. Zeus eased his son's fate. He made an unbreakable agreement with Hera that his son would not be under Eurystheus's power for his entire life. He would perform only 12 great feats on behalf of Eurystheus, and then not only would he be freed from his power, but he would even receive immortality. The Thunderer knew that his son would have to overcome many great dangers, so he commanded his beloved daughter Athena Pallas to help the son of Alcmene. Zeus often had to grieve when he saw his son performing great labors in the service of the weak and cowardly Eurystheus. But he could not break the oath he had given to Hera. On the same day that Sphene's son was born, Alcmene also gave birth to twins. The elder was the son of Zeus, named Alcaeus at birth, and the younger was the son of Amphitryon, named Iphicles. Alcaeus was the greatest son of Greece. He was later named Heracles by the Pythia, the oracle of Delphi. Under this name, he became famous, gained immortality, and was accepted into the pantheon of the bright gods of Olympus. Hera began to persecute Heracles from the very first day of his life. Learning that Heracles had been born and was lying wrapped in swaddling clothes with his brother Iphicles, she sent 2 snakes to destroy the newborn hero. It was already night when the snakes, their eyes gleaming, crept into Alcmene's room. They quietly crawled up to the cradle where the twins lay and were about to wrap themselves around little Hercules' body and suffocate him when Zeus's son woke up. He stretched out his little hands toward the snakes, grabbed them by the necks, and squeezed them with such force that he immediately strangled them. Alcmene jumped up from her bed in horror. Seeing the snakes in the cradle, the women who had been resting cried out loudly. Everyone rushed to Alcibiades' cradle. At the women's cries, Amphitryon came running with his sword drawn. They all surrounded the cradle and saw an extraordinary miracle. The little newborn Heracles was holding 2 huge strangled snakes, which were still writhing weakly in his tiny hands. Stunned by the strength of his adopted son, Amphitryon summoned the seer Tiresias and asked him about the fate of the newborn. Then the prophetic old man told him how many great deeds Hercules would perform, and predicted that he would achieve immortality at the end of his life. Learning of the great glory that awaited Alcmene's eldest son, Amphitryon gave him an upbringing worthy of a hero. Amphitryon cared not only for the development of Heracles' strength, but also for his education. He was taught to read, write, sing, and play the lyre. However, Hercules was not as successful in science and music as he was in wrestling, archery, and weaponry. Often, the music teacher, Orpheus's brother Linus, had to get angry with his student and even punish him. Once, during a lesson, Linus struck Hercules, annoyed by his unwillingness to learn. The angry Hercules grabbed a lyre and struck Linus on the head with it. The young Hercules miscalculated the force of the blow. The blow from the lyre was so strong that Linus fell dead on the spot. Hercules was brought to court for this murder. In his defense, the son of Alcmene said, "After all, the most just of judges, Rhadamanthus, says that anyone who is struck may respond with a blow." The judges acquitted Hercules, but his stepfather, Amphitryon, fearing that something similar might happen again, sent Hercules to the wooded Cithaeron to herd cattle. Hercules in Thebes. Heracles grew up in the forests of Cithaeron and became a mighty young man. He was a head taller than everyone else, and his strength far exceeded that of a man. At first glance, one could recognize him as the son of Zeus, especially by his eyes, which shone with an extraordinary divine light. No one could match Hercules in military exercises, and he was so skilled with a bow and spear that he never missed. When he was still a young man, Hercules killed the fearsome Cephironian lion that lived on the mountain peaks. The young Hercules attacked it, killed it, and skinned it. He put the skin on himself, throwing it over his mighty shoulders like a cloak. He tied it around his chest with its paws, and the lion's head served as his helmet. Hercules made himself a huge club from an ash tree as hard as iron, which he had uprooted in the Nemean grove. Hermes gave Hercules a sword, Apollo gave him a bow and arrows, Hephaestus made him a golden armor, and Athena herself wove clothes for him. When he grew up, Hercules defeated King Augean of Orchomenus, to whom Thebes paid a large annual tribute. He killed Augean during the battle and imposed a tribute on Orchomenus that was twice as much as that paid by Thebes. For this feat, Creon, king of Thebes, gave Hercules his daughter Megara as his wife, and the gods sent him 3 beautiful sons. Heracles lived happily in 7-gated Thebes, but the great goddess Hera still burned with hatred for the son of Zeus. She sent a terrible disease upon Heracles. The great hero lost his mind, and madness took hold of him. In a fit of rage, Hercules killed all his children and the children of his brother Iphicles. When the fit passed, Hercules was overcome with deep sorrow. Cleansed of the stain of his involuntary murder, Hercules left Thebes and went to sacred Delphi to ask the god Apollo what he should do. Apollo commanded Hercules to go to the homeland of his ancestors in Tiryns and serve Eurystheus for 12 years. Through the mouth of the Pythia, the son of Leto predicted to Hercules that he would gain immortality if he performed 12 great feats at the command of Eurystheus. Hercules in the service of Eurystheus. Hercules settled in Tiryns and became a servant of the weak and cowardly Eurystheus. Eurystheus feared the mighty hero and did not allow him to enter Mycenae. He conveyed all his orders to the son of Zeus in Tiryns through his messenger Copreus. The Nemean lion, first feat. Heracles did not have to wait long for his first assignment from King Eurystheus. He ordered Heracles to kill the Nemean lion. This lion, begotten by Typhon and Echidna, was of monstrous size. It lived near the city of Nemea and ravaged the entire surrounding area. Heracles boldly set out on his dangerous quest. Arriving in Nemea, he immediately set off for the mountains to find the lion's lair. It was already noon when the hero reached the mountain slopes. There was not a soul to be seen anywhere. No shepherds, no farmers. All living creatures had fled from these places in fear of the terrible lion. Hercules searched for a long time among the wooded slopes of the mountains and in the ravines for the lion's lair. And finally, when the sun was already setting in the west, he found the lair in a gloomy ravine. It was located in a huge cave with 2 exits. Hercules blocked one of the exits with huge stones and waited for the lion, hiding behind the stones. Towards evening, when twilight was already approaching, a monstrous lion with a long, shaggy mane appeared. Hercules drew the bowstring of his bow and shot 3 arrows at the lion, one after another. But the arrows bounced off its skin, which was as hard as steel. The lion roared menacingly, its growl rolling like thunder across the mountains. Looking around in all directions, the lion stood in the gorge and searched, with eyes burning with rage, for the one who dared to shoot arrows at him. But then he saw Hercules and leaped at the hero with a huge jump. Hercules' club flashed like lightning and struck the lion's head with a thunderous blow. The lion fell to the ground, stunned by the terrible blow. Hercules rushed at the lion, grabbed it with his mighty arms, and strangled it. Lifting the slain lion onto his mighty shoulders, Hercules returned to Nemea, made a sacrifice to Zeus, and established the Nemean Games in memory of his first feat. When Hercules brought the lion he had killed to Mycenae, Eurystheus turned pale with fear at the sight of the monstrous lion. The king of Mycenae realized what superhuman strength Hercules possessed. He forbade him even to approach the gates of Mycenae. When Hercules brought proof of his feats, Eurystheus looked at them in horror from the high walls of Mycenae. The Lernaean Hydra, second labor. After his first labor, Eurystheus sent Heracles to kill the Lernaean Hydra. It was a monster with the body of a snake and 9 dragon heads. Like the Nemean lion, the Hydra was spawned by Typhon and Echidna. The Hydra lived in a swamp near the city of Lerna, and crawling out of its lair, destroyed entire herds and ravaged the surrounding area. Fighting the 9-headed Hydra was dangerous because one of its heads was immortal. Hercules set off for Lerna with his son Iolaus. Arriving at the swamp near the city of Lerna, Hercules left Iolaus with the chariot in a nearby grove and went to look for the Hydra. He found it in a cave surrounded by swamp. Having heated his arrows red hot, Hercules began to shoot them one after another, at the Hydra. Hercules' arrows enraged the Hydra. It crawled out of the darkness of the cave, writhing with its shiny, scaly body, rose menacingly on its huge tail, and was about to pounce on the hero. But Zeus's son stepped on its torso with his foot and pinned it to the ground. The Hydra wrapped its tail around Hercules' legs and tried to knock him down. The hero stood like an unshakable rock, and with swings of his heavy club, knocked off the Hydra's heads one by one. The club whistled through the air like a whirlwind. The Hydra's heads flew off, but the Hydra was still alive. Then Hercules noticed that 2 new heads were growing in place of each head he cut off. Help came to the Hydra. A monstrous crab crawled out of the swamp and clamped its pincers onto Hercules' leg. Then the hero called on his friend Iolaus for help. Iolaus killed the monstrous crab, set fire to part of the nearby grove, and burned the Hydra's necks with burning tree trunks, from which Hercules knocked off the heads with his club. New heads stopped growing on the Hydra. It resisted the son of Zeus with less and less strength. Finally, the immortal head flew off the Hydra. The monstrous Hydra was defeated and fell dead to the ground. The victorious Hercules buried its immortal head deep in the ground and piled a huge rock on top of it so that it could not come back to life. Then the great hero cut open the Hydra's body and dipped his arrows in its poisonous bile. From then on, the wounds from Heracles' arrows became incurable. Heracles returned to Tiryns with great triumph, but there, a new assignment from Eurystheus awaited him. The Stymphalian birds, third labor. Eurystheus ordered Hercules to kill the Stymphalian birds. These birds had turned the entire area around the Arcadian city of Stymphalus into a desert. They attacked both animals and people, tearing them apart with their copper claws and beaks. But the most frightening thing was that the feathers of these birds were made of hard bronze, and when the birds took flight, they could drop them like arrows on anyone who dared to attack them. It was difficult for Hercules to carry out Eurystheus's task. The warrior goddess Athena Pallas came to his aid. She gave Hercules 2 bronze symbols forged by the god Hephaestus, and told him to stand on a high hill near the forest where the Stymphalian birds nested and strike the symbols. When the birds took flight, he was to shoot them with his bow. Hercules did as he was told. Climbing the hill, he struck the symbols, and such a deafening clang arose that the birds flew up in a huge flock above the forest and began to circle above it in terror. They rained their sharp, arrow-like feathers down on the ground, but the feathers did not hit Hercules, who was standing on the hill. The hero grabbed his bow and began to shoot the birds with deadly arrows. In fear, the Stymphalian birds flew up into the clouds and disappeared from Hercules' sight. The birds flew far beyond the borders of Greece, to the shores of the Euxine Sea, and never returned to the vicinity of Stymphalos. Thus, Hercules fulfilled Eurystheus's task and returned to Tiryns, but immediately had to set out on an even more difficult feat. The serene deer, fourth labor. Eurystheus knew that a wonderful Ceryneian hind lived in Arcadia, sent by the goddess Artemis to punish the people. This hind ravaged the fields. Eurystheus sent Heracles to catch it and ordered him to bring the hind alive to Mycenae. This doe was extraordinarily beautiful, with golden antlers and copper legs. Like the wind, she raced through the mountains and valleys of Arcadia, never knowing fatigue. Heracles pursued the Ceryneian doe for a whole year. She ran through mountains and plains, leaped over chasms, and swam across rivers. The doe ran farther and farther north. The hero kept up with her, pursuing her without losing sight of her. Finally, Heracles reached the far north in pursuit of the doe, the land of the Hyperboreans and the source of the Istros. Here the doe stopped. The hero wanted to grab her, but she slipped away and, like an arrow, rushed back south. The chase began again. Heracles only managed to catch up with the doe in Arcadia. Even after such a long chase, she had not lost her strength. Desperate to catch the doe, Hercules resorted to his unerring arrows. He wounded the golden-horned doe in the leg with an arrow, and only then was he able to catch her. Hercules hoisted the wonderful doe onto his shoulders and was about to carry her to Mycenae when Artemis appeared before him in anger and said, "Did you not know, Hercules, that this doe is mine? Why did you offend me by wounding my beloved doe? Do you not know that I do not forgive insults? Or do you think that you are more powerful than the Olympian gods?" Hercules bowed reverently before the beautiful goddess and replied, "O great daughter of Leto, do not blame me. I have never insulted the immortal gods who live on bright Olympus. I have always honored the celestials with rich sacrifices and never considered myself their equal, even though I myself am the son of Zeus, the Thunderer. I did not pursue your doe of my own free will, but by the command of Eurystheus. The gods themselves commanded me to serve him, and I dare not disobey Eurystheus." Artemis forgave Heracles for his guilt. The great son of Zeus, the Thunderer, brought the Ceryneian hind alive to Mycenae and gave it to Eurystheus. The Erymanthian boar and the battle with the centaurs. Fifth labor. After hunting the copper-footed doe for a whole year, Hercules did not rest for long. Eurystheus gave him another task. Hercules had to kill the Erymanthian boar. This boar, possessed of monstrous strength, lived on Mount Erymanthus and ravaged the surroundings of the city of Psophis. It showed no mercy to humans and killed them with its huge tusks. Hercules set off for Mount Erymanthus. On the way, he visited the wise centaur Pholus. Pholus welcomed the great son of Zeus with honor and arranged a feast for him. During the feast, the centaur opened a large vessel of wine to treat the hero to something better. The aroma of the wonderful wine spread far and wide. Other centaurs smelled the aroma. They were terribly angry with Pholus for opening the vessel. The wine did not belong to Pholus alone, but was the property of all the centaurs. The centaurs rushed to Pholus's dwelling and attacked him and Heracles by surprise as they were feasting merrily, their heads adorned with ivy wreaths. Heracles was not afraid of the centaurs. He quickly jumped up from his bed and began throwing huge smoking torches at the attackers. The centaurs fled, and Hercules wounded them with his poisonous arrows. The hero pursued them all the way to Malaya. There the centaurs took refuge with Hercules' friend Chiron, the wisest of the centaurs. Hercules followed them into the cave. In his anger, he drew his bow, and an arrow flashed through the air and pierced the knee of one of the centaurs. Hercules had not struck an enemy, but his friend Chiron. Great sorrow overwhelmed the hero when he saw whom he had wounded. Hercules hurried to wash and bandage his friend's wound, but nothing could help. Hercules knew that the wound from the arrow, poisoned with the Hydra's bile, was incurable. Chiron also knew that he was facing a painful death. In order not to suffer from the wound, he voluntarily descended into the gloomy kingdom of Hades. Deeply saddened, Hercules left Chiron and soon reached Mount Erymanthus. There, in a dense forest, he found a fearsome boar and drove it out of the thicket with a shout. Hercules pursued the boar for a long time and finally cornered it in the deep snow at the top of the mountain. The boar got stuck in the snow, and Hercules rushed at it, tied it up, and carried it alive to Mycenae. When Eurystheus saw the monstrous boar, he hid in a large bronze vessel out of fear. The cattle yard of King Augeas, the sixth labor. Soon Eurystheus gave Heracles a new task. He had to clean all the manure from the cattle yard of Augeas, king of Elis I, son of the radiant Helios. The sun god had given his son untold riches. Augeas's herds were especially numerous. Among his herds were 300 bulls with legs as white as snow, 200 bulls as red as Sidonian purple, 12 bulls dedicated to the god Helios, as white as swans, and 1 bull distinguished by its extraordinary beauty, shining like a star. Hercules offered to clean Augeas's entire huge cattle yard in 1 day if he agreed to give him 1/10 of his herds. Augeas agreed. It seemed impossible to him to complete such a task in 1 day. Hercules broke down the wall surrounding the cattle yard on 2 opposite sides and diverted the waters of 2 rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus, into it. The water from these rivers washed away all the manure from the cattle yard in 1 day, and Hercules rebuilt the walls. When the hero came to Augeas to claim his reward, the proud king did not give him the promised 1/10 of the herds, and Hercules had to return to Tiryns empty-handed. The great hero took terrible revenge on the king of Elis. A few years later, having been released from his service to Eurystheus, Hercules invaded Elis with a large army, defeated Augeas in a bloody battle, and killed him with his deadly arrow. After his victory, Hercules gathered his army and all the rich spoils near the city of Pisa, made sacrifices to the Olympian gods, and established the Olympic Games, which have been celebrated by all Greeks every 4 years on the sacred plain, planted by Hercules himself with olive trees dedicated to the goddess Athena Pallas. Hercules took revenge on all of Augeas's allies. The king of Pylos, Neleus, paid a particularly heavy price. Heracles, arriving with his army at Pylos, took the city and killed Neleus and his 11 sons. Neleus's son Periclymenus, to whom Poseidon, ruler of the sea, had given the gift of transforming himself into a lion, a snake, and a bee, did not escape either. Heracles killed him when, having turned into a bee, Periclymenus sat on one of the horses harnessed to Heracles' chariot. Only one of Neleus's sons, Nestor, remained alive. Nestor later became famous among the Greeks for his exploits and great wisdom. Let us briefly dwell on the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games were the most important of the pan-Hellenic festivals, during which universal peace was declared throughout Greece. A few months before the Games, ambassadors were sent throughout Greece and the Greek colonies to invite people to the Games in Olympia. The Games were held every 4 years. They included competitions in running, wrestling, boxing, discus and javelin throwing, and chariot racing. The winners of the games received an olive wreath as a reward and enjoyed great honor. The Greeks counted the years according to the Olympic Games, considering the first to have taken place in 776 BC. The Olympic Games existed until 393 AD, when they were banned by Emperor Theodosius as incompatible with Christianity. 30 years later, Emperor Theodosius II burned down the Temple of Zeus at Olympia and all the magnificent buildings that adorned the site where the Olympic Games were held. They were reduced to ruins and gradually covered by sand from the Alpheus River. Only the excavations carried out at the site of Olympia in the 19th century AD, mainly from 1875 to 1881, gave us an accurate picture of ancient Olympia and the Olympic Games. The Cretan Bull, seventh labor. To complete Eurystheus' seventh task, Hercules had to leave Greece and go to the island of Crete. Eurystheus instructed him to bring a Cretan bull to Mycenae. This bull was sent to King Minos of Crete, son of Europa, by Poseidon, the god of the sea. Minos was to sacrifice the bull to Poseidon. But Minos felt sorry for sacrificing such a beautiful bull. He kept it in his herd and sacrificed one of his own bulls to Poseidon instead. Poseidon was angry with Minos and sent madness upon the bull that had come out of the sea. The bull ran wild across the island, destroying everything in its path. The great hero Heracles caught the bull and tamed it. He sat on the bull's broad back and swam across the sea from Crete to the Peloponnese. Heracles brought the bull to Mycenae, but Eurystheus was afraid to keep Poseidon's bull in his herd and set it free. Smelling freedom again, the mad bull rushed across the Peloponnese to the north and finally ran into Attica on the Marathon field. There he was, killed by the great Athenian hero, Theseus. The horses of Diomedes, the eighth labor. After taming the Cretan bull, Heracles, on the orders of Eurystheus, had to go to Thrace to the king of the Bistones, Diomedes. This king had horses of marvelous beauty and strength. They were chained in their stalls with iron chains, as no other restraints could hold them. King Diomedes fed these horses human flesh. He threw them all the foreigners who, driven by storms, landed at his city. Hercules and his companions came to this Thracian king. He took Diomedes' horses and led them to his ship. Diomedes himself, with his warlike bystones, caught up with Hercules on the shore. Entrusting the protection of the horses to his beloved Abderus, son of Hermes, Hercules entered into battle with Diomedes. Hercules had few companions, but Diomedes was defeated and fell in battle. Heracles returned to the ship. How great was his despair when he saw that the wild horses had torn his beloved Abderus to pieces. Heracles arranged a lavish funeral for his beloved, piled a high mound on his grave, and founded a city next to the grave, naming it Abdera, in honor of his beloved. Hercules brought Diomedes' horses to Eurystheus, who ordered them to be set free. The wild horses fled to the Lycaon mountains, covered with dense forest, and were torn apart by wild beasts there. Hercules at Admetus. Based mainly on Euripides' tragedy, Alcestis. When Hercules sailed across the sea to the shores of Thrace for the horses of King Diomedes, he decided to visit his friend, King Admetus, as the route lay past the city of Pherae, where Admetus ruled. Hercules chose a difficult time for Admetus. Great sorrow reigned in the house of the king of Pherae. His wife Alcestis was about to die. Once upon a time, the goddesses of fate, the great Moirai, at Apollo's request, determined that Admetus could escape death if, in the last hour of his life, someone agreed to voluntarily descend into the gloomy kingdom of Hades in his place. When the hour of death came, Admetus asked his elderly parents if one of them would agree to die in his place, but they refused. None of the inhabitants of Pharis agreed to die voluntarily for King Admetus. Then the young, beautiful Alcestis decided to sacrifice her life for her beloved husband. On the day Admetus was to die, his wife prepared for death. She washed her body and put on funeral clothes and jewelry. Approaching the hearth, Alcestis addressed the goddess Hestia, who brings happiness to the home, with a fervent prayer. "O great goddess, for the last time I kneel before you here. I beg you, protect my orphaned children, for today I must descend into the realm of gloomy Hades. Oh, do not let them die as I die, prematurely. May their lives here, in their homeland, be happy and prosperous." Then Alcestis went around all the altars of the gods and decorated them with myrtle. Finally, she went to her chambers and fell in tears onto her bed. Her children, her son and daughter, came to her. They wept bitterly on their mother's chest. Alcestis's maids also wept. In despair, Admetus embraced his young wife and begged her not to leave him. Alcestis is already ready for death. The god of death, Thanatos, hated by gods and men, is already approaching the palace of King Fair with silent steps to cut a lock of hair from Alcestis's head with his sword. Apollo himself, with his golden hair, asked him to delay the hour of death of his beloved Admetus's wife. But Thanatos was unyielding. Alcestis senses the approach of death. In horror, she exclaims, "Oh, Charon's two-oared boat is already approaching me." And the ferryman of the souls of the dead steering the boat cries out menacingly to me, "Why are you delaying? Hurry, hurry! Time waits for no one. Don't delay us. Everything is ready. Hurry!" Oh, let me go. My legs are weakening. Death is approaching. Black night covers my eyes. Oh, children, children. Your mother is no longer alive. Live happily. Admetus, your life was dearer to me than my own. May the sun shine on you rather than on me. Admetus, you love our children no less than I do. Oh, do not take a stepmother into your home, lest she hurt them. Poor Admet suffers. You take all the joy of life with you, Alcestis, he exclaims. Now I will mourn you for the rest of my life. Oh, gods, gods, what a wife you are taking from me. Alcestis says softly, "Farewell. My eyes are closed forever. Farewell, children. Now I am nothing. Farewell, Admetus. Oh, look at me one more time. Don't leave the children. Oh, let me die too," Admetus exclaims tearfully. Alcestis's eyes closed, her body grew cold, and she died. Admetus wept inconsolably over the dead woman, and bitterly lamented his fate. He ordered a lavish funeral for his wife. He ordered everyone in the city to mourn Alcestis, the best of women, for 8 months. The whole city was filled with grief, for everyone loved the good queen. They were already preparing to carry Alcestis's body to her tomb when Heracles arrived in the city of Thebes. He went to Admetus's palace and met his friend at the palace gates. Admetus welcomed the great son of Zeus, the ruler of the gods, with honor. Not wanting to upset his guest, Admetus tries to hide his grief from him. But Hercules immediately notices that his friend is deeply saddened and asks him the reason for his grief. Admetus gives Hercules an unclear answer, and he decides that Admetus's distant relative, whom the king had taken in after her father's death, has died. Admetus orders his servants to take Hercules to the guest room and prepare a rich feast for him, and to lock the doors to the women's quarters so that Hercules cannot hear the cries of grief. Unaware of the misfortune that has befallen his friend, Hercules feasts merrily in Admetus's palace. He drinks cup after cup. It is hard for the servants to serve their cheerful guest, for they know that their beloved mistress is no longer alive. No matter how hard they try on Admetus's orders to hide their grief, Hercules notices the tears in their eyes and the sadness on their faces. He calls one of the servants to feast with him, saying that wine will give him oblivion and smooth out the wrinkles of sorrow on his forehead. But the servant refuses. Then Hercules realizes that a great sorrow has befallen Admetus's house. He begins to question the servant about what happened to his friend, and finally the servant tells him, "O stranger, Admetus's wife has descended today into the realm of Hades." Hercules was saddened. He felt pain that he had feasted in a wreath of ivy and sung in the house of a friend who had suffered such great grief. Hercules decided to thank the noble Admetus for welcoming him so hospitably, despite the grief that had befallen him. The great hero quickly decided to take Alcestis away from Thanatos, the gloomy god of death. After learning from a servant where Alcestis's tomb was located, he hurried there. Hiding behind the tomb, Hercules waited for Thanatos to arrive and drink the sacrificial blood at the grave. Suddenly, the flapping of Thanatos's black wings could be heard, and a grave chill blew through the air. The gloomy god of death flew to the tomb and greedily pressed his lips to the sacrificial blood. Hercules jumped out of his hiding place and rushed at Thanatos. He seized the god of death with his mighty hands, and a terrible struggle began between them. Straining all his strength, Hercules fought with the god of death. Thanatos squeezed Hercules' chest with his bony hands, breathing his icy breath on him, and the cold of death blew on the hero from his wings. Nevertheless, the mighty son of Zeus, the Thunderer, defeated Thanatos. He bound Thanatos and demanded as ransom for his freedom that the god of death bring Alcestis back to life. Thanatos gave Hercules the life of Admetus's wife, and the great hero led her back to her husband's palace. Admetus, returning to the palace after his wife's funeral, bitterly mourned his irreplaceable loss. It was hard for him to stay in the empty palace. Where could he go? He envied the dead. He hated life. He called for death. All his happiness had been stolen by Thanatos and carried away to the kingdom of Hades. What could be harder for him than the loss of his beloved wife? Admetus regretted that Alcestis had not allowed him to die with her, for then their deaths would have united them. Hades would have received two souls faithful to each other instead of one. Together, these souls would have crossed the Acheron. Suddenly, Heracles appeared before the grieving Admetus. He is leading a woman covered with a veil by the hand. Heracles asks Admetus to leave this woman, whom he won after a difficult struggle in the palace until his return from Thrace. Admetus refuses. He asks Hercules to take the woman to someone else. It is hard for Admetus to see another woman in his palace when he has lost the one he loved so much. Hercules insists, and even wants Admetus himself to bring the woman into the palace. He does not allow Admetus's servants to touch her. Finally, Admetus, unable to refuse his friend, takes the woman by the hand to lead her into his palace. Hercules says to him, "You took her, Admetus, so guard her. Now you can say that the son of Zeus is a true friend. Look at the woman. Doesn't she resemble your wife Alcestis? Stop grieving. Be happy with your life again." "Oh, great gods," exclaimed Admetus, lifting the woman's veil. "My wife Alcestis. Oh no, it's only her shadow. She stands silently, not uttering a word." "No, it is not a shadow," replied Hercules. "It is Alcestis. I won her in a difficult struggle with Thanatos, the Lord of Souls. She will remain silent until she is freed from the power of the gods of the underworld by offering them sacrificial offerings. She will remain silent until night has given way to day, 3 times. Only then will she speak. Now farewell, Admetus. Be happy, and always observe the great custom of hospitality, sanctified by my father, Zeus himself." "O great son of Zeus, you have given me the joy of life again," exclaimed Admetus. "How can I thank you? Stay with me as my guest. I will order all my domains to celebrate your victory and command that great sacrifices be made to the gods. Stay with me." Hercules did not stay with Admetus. A feat awaited him. He had to fulfill Eurystheus' command and obtain the horses of King Diomedes for him. Hippolyta's belt, the 9th labor. Hercules' 9th feat was his expedition to the land of the Amazons for the belt of Queen Hippolyta. This belt was given to Hippolyta by Ares, the god of war, and she wore it as a sign of her authority over all the Amazons. Admetus's daughter Eurystheus, a priestess of the goddess Hera, wanted this belt at all costs. To fulfill her wish, Eurystheus sent Hercules to fetch the belt. Gathering a small band of heroes, the great son of Zeus set off on a long journey in a single ship. Although Hercules' band was small, it included many glorious heroes, among them the great hero of Attica, Theseus. A long journey lay ahead of the heroes. They had to reach the farthest shores of the Euxine Sea, for there lay the land of the Amazons, with its capital, Themyscira. On the way, Hercules and his companions landed on the island of Paros, where the sons of Minos ruled. On this island, the sons of Minos killed 2 of Hercules' companions. Hercules, angered by this, immediately started a war with the sons of Minos. He killed many of the inhabitants of Paros, while others he drove into the city and kept under siege until the besieged sent envoys to Hercules and begged him to take 2 of them in place of his slain companions. Then Hercules lifted the siege and took Minos' grandsons, Alcaeus and Sphenel, in place of those who had been killed. From Paros, Hercules arrived in Mysia to King Lycus, who received him with great hospitality. Unexpectedly, the king of the Bebryces attacked Lycus. Hercules defeated the king of the Bebryces with his troops and destroyed his capital, giving the entire land of the Bebryces to Lycus. King Lycus named this country Heraclea, in honor of Hercules. After this feat, Hercules continued on his way and finally arrived at the city of the Amazons, Themyscira. The fame of the son of Zeus had long since reached the land of the Amazons. Therefore, when Hercules' ship docked at Themyscira, the Amazons and their queen came out to meet the hero. They looked with amazement at the great son of Zeus, who stood out like an immortal god among his fellow heroes. Queen Hippolyta asked the great hero Hercules, "Glorious son of Zeus, tell me, what brought you to our city? Do you bring us peace or war?" Heracles replied to the queen, "Queen, I did not come here of my own free will with my army, having traveled a long way across the stormy sea. I was sent by Eurystheus, the ruler of Mycenae. His daughter Admetus wants your belt, a gift from the god Ares. Eurystheus has instructed me to obtain your belt." Hippolyta was unable to refuse Hercules anything. She was already prepared to voluntarily give him the belt, but the great Hera, wishing to destroy Hercules, whom she hated, took the form of an Amazon, mingled with the crowd, and began to persuade the warriors to attack Hercules' army. "Hercules is lying," Hera said to the Amazons. "He came to you with a treacherous intent. The hero wants to kidnap your queen Hippolyta and take her as a slave to his home." The Amazons believed Hera. They grabbed their weapons and attacked Hercules' army. At the head of the Amazon army was Aella, swift as the wind. She was the first to attack Hercules, like a violent whirlwind. The great hero repelled her attack and put her to flight. Aella thought she could escape the hero by running fast, but all her speed did not help her. Hercules caught up with her and struck her with his shining sword. Protoia also fell in battle. She killed 7 of Hercules' companions with her own hands, but she could not escape the arrow of the great son of Zeus. Then 7 Amazons attacked Hercules at once. They were companions of Artemis herself. No one was their equal in the art of spearmanship. Covering themselves with shields, they threw their spears at Hercules. But this time, the spears flew past him. The hero struck them all down with his club. One after another, they fell to the ground, their armor glistening. Heracles took the Amazon Melanippe, who led the army into battle, captive, and with her he also captured Antiope. The formidable warriors were defeated, their army fled, and many of them fell at the hands of the heroes who pursued them. The Amazons made peace with Hercules. Hippolyta bought the freedom of the mighty Melanippe at the price of her belt. The heroes took Antiope with them. Heracles gave her to Theseus as a reward for his great bravery. Thus, Heracles obtained Hippolyta's belt. Heracles saves Hesione, daughter of Laomedon. On his way back to Tiryns, from the land of the Amazons, Heracles arrived by ship with his army at Troy. A terrible sight met the heroes' eyes when they landed near Troy. They saw the beautiful daughter of Laomedon, king of Troy, Hesione, chained to a rock by the sea. She was doomed, like Andromeda, to be devoured by a monster that came out of the sea. This monster was sent by Poseidon as punishment to Laomedon for refusing to pay him and Apollo for building the walls of Troy. The proud king, who, according to Zeus's decree, was to be served by both gods, even threatened to cut off their ears if they demanded payment. Then, enraged, Apollo sent a terrible plague upon all of Laomedon's possessions, and Poseidon sent a monster that ravaged the surroundings of Troy, sparing no one. only by sacrificing his daughter's life could Laomedon save his country from terrible disaster. Against his will, he had to chain his daughter Hesione to a rock by the sea. Seeing the unfortunate girl, Hercules volunteered to save her, and for saving Hesione, he demanded from Laomedon, as a reward, the horses that Zeus, the Thunderer, had given to the king of Troy as ransom for his son Ganymede. He had once been kidnapped by Zeus's eagle and taken to Olympus. Laomedon agreed to Hercules' demands. The great hero ordered the Trojans to build a rampart on the seashore and hid behind it. As soon as Hercules hid behind the rampart, a monster emerged from the sea and, opening its huge mouth, rushed at Hesione. With a loud cry, Hercules ran out from behind the rampart, rushed at the monster, and plunged his double-edged sword deep into its chest. Hercules saved Hesione. When the son of Zeus demanded the promised reward from Laomedon, the king was sorry to part with the wonderful horses, so he did not give them to Hercules, and even drove him away from Troy with threats. Hercules left Laomedon's domain, hiding his anger deep in his heart. He could not take revenge on the king, who had deceived him, as his army was too small, and the hero could not hope to quickly capture the impregnable Troy. The great son of Zeus could not stay long in Troy. He had to hurry to Mycenae with Hippolyta's belt. The cows of Geryon, the 10th labor. Shortly after returning from his expedition to the land of the Amazons, Hercules set out on a new labor. Eurystheus tasked him with bringing the cows of the great Geryon, son of Chrysaor and the Oceanid Caliro, to Mycenae. The journey to Geryon was long. Hercules had to reach the westernmost edge of the earth, the place where the radiant sun god Helios descends from the sky at sunset. Hercules set off alone on his long journey. He crossed Africa, the barren deserts of Libya, the lands of wild barbarians, and finally reached the ends of the earth. Here, on both sides of a narrow strait, he erected 2 giant stone pillars as an eternal monument to his feet. Hercules had to wander a lot more after that, until he reached the shores of the gray ocean. The hero sat down in thought on the shore by the ever-roaring waters of the ocean. How could he reach the island of Erythea, where Geryon grazed his herds? The day was already drawing to a close. Then the chariot of Helios appeared, descending toward the waters of the ocean. The bright rays of Helios blinded Hercules, and he was overcome by an unbearable, scorching heat. Hercules jumped up in anger and grabbed his formidable bow, but the bright Helios was not angry. He smiled kindly at the hero, pleased with the extraordinary courage of the great son of Zeus. Helios himself offered Heracles a ride to Erythea in the golden boat in which the sun god sailed every evening with his horses and chariot from the western to the eastern edge of the earth to his golden palace. The delighted hero boldly jumped into the golden boat and quickly reached the shores of Erythea. As soon as he landed on the island, Orpheus, the fearsome 2-headed dog, smelled him and rushed at the hero, barking. Hercules killed him with a single blow of his heavy club. Orpheus was not the only one guarding Geryon's herds. Heracles also had to fight Geryon's shepherd, the giant Eurytion. The son of Zeus quickly defeated the giant and drove Geryon's cows to the seashore, where Helios's golden boat was moored. Geryon heard the mooing of his cows and went to the herd. Seeing that his dog Orpheus and the giant Eurytion had been killed, he chased after the thief of his herd and caught up with him on the seashore. Geryon was a monstrous giant. He had 3 bodies, 3 heads, 6 arms, and 6 legs. He covered himself with 3 shields during the battle and threw 3 huge spears at his enemy at once. Hercules had to fight such a giant, but the great warrior Athena Pallas helped him. As soon as Hercules saw him, he immediately shot his deadly arrow at the giant. The arrow pierced the eye of one of Geryon's heads. The first arrow was followed by a second, then a third. Hercules swung his all-conquering club menacingly, striking Geryon's hero with it like lightning, and the 3-bodied giant fell to the ground, lifeless. Hercules transported Geryon's cows from Erythea in Helios's golden chariot across the stormy ocean and returned the chariot to Helios. Half of the feat was complete. Much work still lay ahead. The cattle had to be driven to Mycenae. Hercules drove the cows across Spain, across the Pyrenees, across Gaul and the Alps, across Italy. In southern Italy, near the city of Rhegium, one of the cows broke away from the herd and swam across the strait to Sicily. There, King Eric, son of Poseidon, saw her and took the cow into his herd. Hercules searched for the cow for a long time. Finally, he asked the god Hephaestus to guard the herd, and he himself crossed over to Sicily and found his cow in King Eric's herd. The king did not want to return it to Hercules. Relying on his strength, he challenged Hercules to a duel. The cow was to be the prize for the winner. Eryx was no match for an opponent like Hercules. The son of Zeus squeezed the king in his mighty arms and strangled him. Hercules returned with the cow to his herd and drove it onward. On the shores of the Ionian Sea, the goddess Hera sent madness upon the entire herd. The mad cows scattered in all directions. With great difficulty, Hercules caught most of the cows in Thrace and finally brought them to Eurystheus in Mycenae. Eurystheus sacrificed them to the great goddess Hera. Cerberus, the 11th labor. No sooner had Hercules returned to Tiryns than Eurystheus sent him on another labor. This was the 11th labor that Hercules had to perform in the service of Eurystheus. Hercules had to overcome incredible difficulties during this labor. He had to descend into the gloomy, terrifying underground kingdom of Hades and bring Eurystheus, the guardian of the underworld, the terrible hellhound Cerberus. Cerberus had 3 heads, snakes writhing around his neck, and his tail ended in a dragon's head with a huge mouth. Hercules went to Laconia and descended into the darkness of the underworld through the gloomy abyss at Taenarus. At the very gates of Hades, Hercules saw the heroes Theseus and Peripheus, king of Thessaly, who had been chained to the rock. They had been punished by the gods for trying to kidnap Hades' wife, Persephone. Theseus begged Hercules, "O great son of Zeus, free me. You see my torment. Only you have the power to deliver me from it." Hercules reached out his hand to Theseus and freed him. When he wanted to free Peripheus as well, the earth shook, and Hercules realized that the gods did not want him to be freed. Hercules submitted to the will of the gods and went further into the darkness of eternal night. Hercules was led into the underworld by Hermes, the messenger of the gods and guide of the souls of the dead, and the great hero's companion was Zeus's beloved daughter, Athena Pallas. When Hercules entered the kingdom of Hades, the shadows of the dead scattered in terror. Only the shadow of the hero Meleager did not flee at the sight of Hercules. It turned to the great son of Zeus with a plea. "O great Hercules, I beg you, in memory of our friendship, to have mercy on my orphaned sister, the beautiful Deianira. She has been left defenseless after my death. Take her as your wife, great hero. Be her protector." Hercules promised to fulfill his friend's request and followed Hermes. The shadow of the terrible Gorgon Medusa rose to meet Hercules, stretching out her copper arms menacingly and flapping her golden wings, snakes writhing on her head. The fearless hero grabbed his sword, but Hermes stopped him with these words: "Do not reach for your sword, Hercules. It is only a disembodied shadow. It does not threaten you with death." Hercules saw many horrors on his way. Finally, he appeared before the throne of Hades. The ruler of the realm of the dead and his wife Persephone looked with delight at the great son of Zeus, the Thunderer, who fearlessly descended into the realm of darkness and sorrow. He stood majestically and calmly before Hades' throne, leaning on his huge club, wearing a lion skin draped over his shoulders and carrying a bow behind him. Hades graciously greeted the son of his great brother Zeus and asked what had made him leave the light of the sun and descend into the realm of darkness. Bowing before Hades, Hercules replied, "O ruler of the souls of the dead, great Hades, do not be angry with me for my request, Almighty One. You know that I did not come to your kingdom of my own free will, and I will not ask you of my own free will. Allow me, Lord Hades, to take your three-headed dog Cerberus to Mycenae. Eurystheus, whom I serve by order of the bright Olympian gods, has commanded me to do this." Hades replied to the hero, "I will grant your request, son of Zeus, but you must subdue Cerberus without weapons. If you subdue him, I will allow you to take him to Eurystheus." Heracles searched for Cerberus throughout the underworld for a long time. Finally, he found him on the banks of the Acheron. Hercules wrapped his arms, strong as steel, around Cerberus's neck. Hades' dog howled menacingly. His howls filled the entire underworld. He tried to break free from Hercules' embrace, but the hero's powerful arms only tightened their grip on Cerberus's neck. Cerberus wrapped his tail around the hero's legs and sank his dragon teeth into his body. But it was all in vain. The mighty Hercules squeezed his neck harder and harder. Finally, the half-strangled dog of Hades fell at the hero's feet. Hercules tamed him and led him from the realm of darkness to Mycenae. Cerberus was frightened by the daylight. He was covered in cold sweat, and poisonous foam dripped from his three mouths onto the ground. Wherever even a drop of foam fell, poisonous herbs grew. Hercules brought Cerberus to the walls of Mycenae. The cowardly Eurystheus was terrified at the sight of the fearsome dog. He begged Hercules on his knees to take Cerberus back to the kingdom of Hades. Hercules granted his request and returned Cerberus, Hades' fearsome guardian, to Hades. The apples of the Hesperides, the 12th labor. Hercules' most difficult labor in the service of Eurystheus was his last, 12th labor. He had to go to the great Titan Atlas, who holds the heavens on his shoulders, and retrieve 3 golden apples from his gardens, which were guarded by Atlas's daughters, the Hesperides. These apples grew on a golden tree, grown by the goddess of the earth, Gaia, as a gift to the great Hera on her wedding day to Zeus. To accomplish this feat, it was first necessary to find the way to the gardens of the Hesperides, guarded by a dragon that never slept. No one knew the way to the Hesperides in Atlas. Hercules wandered long through Asia and Europe, passing through all the countries he had previously traversed in pursuit of Geryon's cows. Everywhere Hercules asked about the way, but no one knew it. In his search, he went to the far north, to the river Eridanus, which eternally rolled its turbulent, boundless waters. On the banks of the Eridanus, beautiful nymphs greeted the great son of Zeus with honor and gave him advice on how to find the way to the gardens of the Hesperides. Hercules had to take the wise old man Nereus by surprise when he came ashore from the depths of the sea and learn from him the way to the Hesperides. No one but Nereus knew this way. Hercules searched for Nereus for a long time. Finally, he managed to find Nereus on the seashore. Hercules attacked the sea god. The struggle with the sea god was difficult. To free himself from Hercules' iron embrace, Nereus took on all sorts of forms, but the hero still did not let him go. Finally, he bound the exhausted Nereus, and the sea god had to reveal to Hercules the secret of the path to the gardens of the Hesperides in order to gain his freedom. Having learned this secret, the son of Zeus released the old sea god and set off on a long journey. Once again, he had to pass through Libya. Here, he met the giant Antaeus, son of Poseidon, god of the seas, and Gaia, goddess of the earth. who had given birth to him, nursed him, and raised him. Antaeus forced all travelers to fight him and mercilessly killed everyone he defeated in battle. The giant demanded that Hercules fight him too. No one could defeat Antaeus in single combat without knowing the secret of where the giant got his ever-renewed strength during the fight. The secret was this: when Antaeus felt that he was beginning to lose strength, he touched the earth, his mother, and his strength was renewed. He drew it from his mother, the great goddess of the earth. But as soon as Antaeus was lifted off the ground and raised into the air, his strength disappeared. Hercules fought Antaeus for a long time. Several times he knocked him to the ground, but Antaeus only grew stronger. Suddenly, during the fight, the mighty Hercules lifted Antaeus high into the air, and the son of Gaia's strength dried up, and Hercules strangled him. Hercules went on and came to Egypt. There, exhausted by the long journey, he fell asleep in the shade of a small grove on the banks of the Nile. The king of Egypt, Busiris, son of Poseidon and the daughter of Epiphus, Lysianassa, saw the sleeping Hercules and ordered the sleeping hero to be bound. He wanted to sacrifice Hercules to his father Zeus. There had been 9 years of crop failure in Egypt. The prophet Thracius, who had come from Cyprus, predicted that the crop failure would only end if Busiris sacrificed a foreigner to Zeus every year. Busiris ordered the prophet Thracius to be seized and was the first to sacrifice him. From then on, the cruel king sacrificed all foreigners who came to Egypt to the Thunderer. Heracles was also brought to the altar, but the great hero broke the ropes that bound him and killed Busiris himself and his son Amphidamant at the altar. Thus, the cruel king of Egypt was punished. Heracles had to face many more dangers on his way before he reached the edge of the earth, where the great Titan Atlas stood. The hero looked in amazement at the mighty Titan, who held the entire sky on his broad shoulders. "O great Titan Atlas," Hercules addressed him, "I am the son of Zeus, Hercules. Eurystheus, king of gold-rich Mycenae, sent me to you. Eurystheus commanded me to obtain from you 3 golden apples from the golden tree in the gardens of the Hesperides." "I will give you 3 apples, son of Zeus," replied Atlas. "But while I go to fetch them, you must take my place and hold up the heavens on your shoulders." Hercules agreed. He took Atlas's place. An incredible weight descended upon the shoulders of Zeus's son. He strained all his strength and held up the heavens. The weight pressed heavily on Hercules' mighty shoulders. He bent under the weight of the sky. His muscles bulged like mountains. Sweat covered his entire body from the strain, but superhuman strength and the help of the goddess Athena enabled him to hold up the sky until Atlas returned with 3 golden apples. Upon his return, Atlas said to the hero, "Here are 3 apples, Hercules. If you want, I will take them to Mycenae myself, and you hold up the sky until I return. Then I will take your place again." Hercules understood Atlas's trickery. He understood that the Titan wanted to free himself from his heavy labor, and he countered trickery with trickery. "All right, Atlas, I agree," replied Hercules. "But first let me make myself a pillow, which I will place on my shoulders so that the vault of heaven does not weigh so heavily on them." Atlas returned to his place and hoisted the weight of the sky onto his shoulders. Hercules picked up his bow and quiver of arrows, took his club and golden apples, and said, "Farewell, Atlas. I held up the sky while you went to fetch the apples of the Hesperides, but I do not want to carry the weight of the sky on my shoulders forever." With these words, Hercules left the Titan, and Atlas had to hold up the sky on his mighty shoulders again, as before. Hercules returned to Eurystheus and gave him the golden apples. Eurystheus gave them to Hercules, and he gave the apples to his patroness, the great daughter of Zeus, Athena Pallas. Athena returned the apples to the Hesperides, so that they would remain in the gardens forever. After his 12th labor, Hercules was freed from his service to Eurystheus. Now he could return to the 7-gated Thebes. But the son of Zeus did not stay there long. New feats awaited him. He gave his wife Megara to his friend Iolaus as a wife, and he himself went back to Tiryns. But it was not only victories that awaited him. Heracles also faced great misfortunes, as the great goddess Hera continued to persecute him. Heracles and Euryt. On the island of Euboea, in the city of Oikalia, ruled King Eurytus. Eurydice's fame as the most skilled archer spread far and wide throughout Greece. Apollo himself, the god of archery, was his teacher, and even gave him a bow and arrows. Once, in his youth, Heracles also learned archery from Eurydice. This king announced throughout Greece that he would give his beautiful daughter Iole in marriage to the hero who would defeat him in an archery contest. Hercules, who had just finished his service with Eurystheus, went to Oikalia, where many heroes of Greece had gathered, and took part in the contest. Heracles easily defeated King Eurydice and demanded that he give him his daughter Iole as his wife. Eurydice did not fulfill his promise. Forgetting the sacred custom of hospitality, he began to mock the great hero. He said that he would not give his daughter to someone who had been a slave to Eurystheus. Finally, Eurystheus and his arrogant sons drove Heracles, who had become drunk during the feast, out of the palace and even out of Oikalia. Heracles left Oikalia. Full of deep sadness, he left Euboea, for the great hero had fallen in love with the beautiful Iole. Harboring malice in his heart toward Eurystheus, who had insulted him, he returned to Tiryns. Some time later, Eurydice's herd was stolen by Autolycus, the most cunning of the Greeks, and son of Hermes. Eurydice accused Heracles of this crime. The king of Oechalia believed that the hero had stolen his herd in order to avenge an insult. Only Iphitus, Eurydice's eldest son, refused to believe that the great Heracles could have stolen his father's herd. Iphitus even volunteered to search for the herd in order to prove the innocence of Heracles, with whom he had a very close friendship. During his search, Iphitus came to Tiryns. Hercules welcomed his friend warmly. One day, as they stood together on the high walls of the fortress of Tiryns, built on a high rock, Hercules was suddenly overcome with a violent rage sent upon him by the great goddess Hera. In his anger, Hercules remembered the insult inflicted on him by Eurydice and his sons. Unable to control himself, he grabbed Iphitus and threw him off the fortress wall. The unfortunate Iphitus was killed. With this unintentional murder, Hercules angered Zeus, as he had violated the sacred custom of hospitality and the sanctity of friendship. As punishment, the great thunderer sent a severe illness upon his son. Heracles suffered for a long time, and finally, exhausted by illness, he went to Delphi to ask Apollo how to get rid of this punishment from the gods. But the prophetess Pythia did not give him an answer. She even expelled Heracles from the temple as someone who had defiled himself with murder. Enraged by this, Hercules stole the tripod from the temple, from which the Pythia gave her prophecies. This angered Apollo. The golden-haired god appeared before Hercules and demanded that he return the tripod, but Hercules refused. A fierce struggle ensued between the sons of Zeus, the immortal god Apollo, and the mortal, the greatest of heroes, Hercules. Zeus did not want Hercules to die. He threw his shining lightning bolt from Olympus between his sons and, separating them, stopped the fight. The brothers reconciled. Then the Pythia gave Heracles this answer: "You will be healed only when you are sold into slavery for 3 years. Give the money received for you to Eurydice as ransom for his son Iphitus, whom you killed." Once again, Hercules had to give up his freedom. He was sold into slavery to Omphale, the queen of Lydia and daughter of Iardas. Hermes himself brought the money received for Hercules to Eurytus, but the proud king of Oechalia did not accept it. He remained an enemy of Hercules. Heracles and Deianira. After Eurytus expelled Heracles from Oechalia, the great hero came to Calydon, a city in Aetolia. Oeneus ruled there. Heracles came to Oeneus to ask for the hand of his daughter, Deianira, as he had promised Meleager in the realm of shadows that he would marry her. In Calydon, Hercules met a formidable rival. Many heroes sought the hand of the beautiful Deianira, among them the river god Achilles. Finally, Oeneus decided that Deianira's hand would go to the winner of a contest. All the suitors refused to fight the mighty Achilles. Only Heracles remained. He had to fight the river god. Seeing Heracles' determination to measure his strength against him, Achilles said to him, "You say you were born of Zeus and Alcmene. You lie that Zeus is your father." And Achilles began to mock the great son of Zeus and slander his mother Alcmene. Frowning, Hercules looked sternly at Achilles. His eyes flashed with anger. And he said, "Achilles, my hands serve me better than my tongue. Be the winner in words, and I will be the winner in deeds." Heracles approached Achilles with a firm step and grabbed him with his mighty hands. The huge Achilles stood firm. The great Heracles could not knock him down. All his efforts were in vain. Achilles stood like an unshakable rock, unmoved by the waves of the sea crashing against it with a thunderous roar. Hercules and Achilles fought chest to chest, like two bulls locked together with their curved horns. Hercules attacked Achilles 3 times, and on the 4th attempt, breaking free from Achilles' grip, the hero grabbed him from behind. Like a heavy mountain, he pressed the river god to the ground. Achilles could barely muster all his strength to free his sweat-covered hands. No matter how hard he strained, Hercules pressed him harder and harder to the ground. Achilles groaned, his knees buckled, and his head touched the ground. In order not to be defeated, Achilles resorted to trickery. He turned into a snake. As soon as Achilles turned into a snake and slipped out of Hercules' hands, Hercules exclaimed with a laugh, "Even in my cradle, I learned to fight snakes." "True, you surpass other snakes, Achilles, but you cannot compare to the Lernaean Hydra. Even though 2 new heads grew in place of the one I cut off, I still defeated her." Hercules grabbed the snake's neck with his hands and squeezed it like iron pincers. Achilles tried to break free from the hero's grip, but couldn't. Then he turned into a bull and attacked Hercules again. Hercules grabbed the bull Achilles by the horns and knocked him to the ground. Hercules knocked him down with such terrible force that he broke one of his horns. Achilles was defeated and gave Deianira to Hercules as his wife. After the wedding, Hercules remained in Oeneus' palace, but he did not stay there long. Once, during a feast, Hercules struck Archelaus' son, Evnomus, for pouring water, prepared for washing his feet, onto his hands. The blow was so strong that the boy fell down dead. Heracles was saddened, and although Archetel forgave him for the accidental killing of his son, the hero, nevertheless, left Calydon and went with his wife, Deianira, to Tiryns. During the journey, Heracles and his wife came to the river Evenus. The centaur Nessus carried travelers across this turbulent river on his broad back for a fee. Nessus offered to carry Deianira to the other side, and Hercules placed her on the centaur's back. The hero himself threw his club and bow to the other side and swam across the turbulent river. As soon as Hercules reached the shore, he suddenly heard Deianira's loud cry. She was calling her husband for help. The centaur, captivated by her beauty, wanted to kidnap her. The son of Zeus shouted menacingly at Nessus, "Where are you running? Do you think your legs will save you? No, you will not escape. No matter how fast you run, my arrow will still catch up with you." Hercules drew his bow, and the arrow flew from the taut string. The deadly arrow caught up with Nessus, piercing his back, and its tip came out through the centaur's chest. Nessus fell to his knees, mortally wounded. Blood, mixed with the poison of the Lernaean Hydra, flowed from his wound. Nessus did not want to die without revenge. He gathered his blood and gave it to Deianira, saying, "O daughter of Oeneus, I carried you across the turbulent waters of the Augean. Take my blood and keep it safe. If Hercules falls out of love with you, this blood will restore his love, and no woman will be dearer to him than you. Just rub it on Hercules' clothes." Deianira took Nessus's blood and hid it. Nessus died. Hercules and Deianira arrived in Tiryns and lived there until Hercules' involuntary killing of his friend Iphitus forced them to leave the glorious city. Hercules and Omphale. For the murder of Iphitus, Hercules was sold into slavery to Omphale, queen of Lydia. Never before had Hercules experienced such hardship as in the service of the proud Lydian queen. The greatest of heroes suffered constant humiliation at her hands. It seemed that Omphale took pleasure in mocking the son of Zeus. Dressing Heracles in women's clothes, she forced him to spin and weave with her maids. The hero who struck the Lernaean Hydra with his heavy club, the hero who brought the terrible Cerberus from the kingdom of Hades, who had strangled the Nemean lion with his bare hands and held the weight of the heavens on his shoulders, the hero whose name alone made his enemies tremble, had to sit bent over a loom or spin wool with hands accustomed to wielding a sharp sword, drawing the bowstring of a powerful bow and striking his enemies with a heavy club. And Omphale, wearing Heracles' lion skin, which covered her entire body and trailed behind her on the ground, in his golden armor, girded with his sword, and with difficulty hoisting the hero's heavy club onto her shoulder, stood before the son of Zeus and mocked him, her slave. Omphale seemed to have set herself the goal of extinguishing all of Hercules' invincible strength. Hercules had to endure everything, for he was completely enslaved by Omphale, and this was to last for 3 long years. Only occasionally did Omphale release the hero from her palace. Once, after leaving Omphale's palace, Hercules fell asleep in the shade of a grove near Ephesus. While he was sleeping, the Cercopes dwarfs crept up on him and tried to steal his weapons. But Hercules woke up just as the Cercopes grabbed his bow and arrows. The hero overpowered them and tied their hands and feet. Hercules put a large pole between the Cercopes' bound feet and carried them to Ephesus. But the Cercopes made Hercules laugh so much with their antics that the great hero let them go. During his slavery under Omphale, Hercules came to Avleda, to King Sylleus, who forced all foreigners who came to him to work like slaves in the vineyards. He also forced Hercules to work. The angry hero tore up all of Sylleus's vines and killed the king himself, who did not honor the sacred custom of hospitality. During his slavery under Omphale, Hercules took part in the Argonauts' expedition. But finally, his punishment ended, and the great son of Zeus was free again. Heracles takes Troy. As soon as Heracles was freed from slavery under Omphale, he immediately gathered a large army of heroes and set sail for Troy on 18 ships to take revenge on King Laomedon, who had deceived him. Arriving at Troy, he entrusted the guarding of the ships to Augean with a small detachment, while he himself moved with the entire army to the walls of Troy. As soon as Hercules left the ships with his army, Laomedon attacked Augean, killed him, and slaughtered almost his entire detachment. Hearing the noise of battle near the ships, Heracles returned, put Laomedon to flight, and drove him into Troy. The siege of Troy did not last long. The heroes broke through the high walls and entered the city. The hero Telamon was the first to enter the city. Hercules, the greatest of heroes, could not bear anyone surpassing him. Drawing his sword, he rushed at Telamon, who had overtaken him. Seeing that certain death threatened him, Telamon quickly bent down and began to gather stones. Hercules was surprised and asked, "What are you doing, Telamon?" "O greatest son of Zeus, I am erecting an altar to Heracles, the victor," replied the cunning Telamon, and his answer appeased the wrath of Zeus's son. During the capture of the city, Heracles killed Laomedon and all his sons with his arrows. Only the youngest of them, Podarces, was spared by the hero. Hercules gave Laomedon's beautiful daughter, Hesione, in marriage to Telamon, who had distinguished himself by his bravery, and allowed her to choose one of the captives and set him free. Hesione chose her brother, Podarces. "He must become a slave before all the other captives," exclaimed Hercules. "Only if you pay a ransom for him will he be set free." Hesiod took off her veil and gave it as a ransom for her brother. From then on, Podarces was called Priam, i.e., purchased. Hercules gave him power over Troy and set off with his army on new exploits. When Hercules was sailing across the sea with his army, returning from Troy, the goddess Hera, wishing to destroy Zeus's hated son, sent a great storm. And so that Zeus would not see the danger threatening his son, Hera begged Hypnos, the god of sleep, to put Zeus, the holder of the Aegis, to sleep. The storm carried Heracles to the island of Kos. The inhabitants of Kos mistook Heracles' ship for a pirate ship and threw stones at it, preventing it from landing. At night, Heracles landed on the island, defeated the inhabitants of Kos, killed their king, Eurypylus, son of Poseidon, and laid waste to the entire island. Zeus was terribly angry when he woke up and learned of the danger his son Hercules had been in. In his anger, he chained Hera in indestructible golden shackles and hung her between the earth and the sky, tying 2 heavy anvils to her feet. Zeus, furious with rage, cast down from high Olympus every one of the Olympians who wanted to come to Hera's aid. He searched long and hard for Hypnos, and would have cast him down from Olympus too, had not the goddess Night hidden the god of sleep. Heracles fights the gods against the giants. Zeus sent his beloved daughter, Athena Pallas, to the island of Kos to call on the great hero Heracles to help them in their fight against the giants. The giants were born from the blood of Uranus, who had been overthrown by Cronus, and were created by the goddess Gaia. They were monstrous giants, with snakes instead of legs, shaggy long hair on their heads, and beards. The giants possessed tremendous strength. They were proud of their power, and they wanted to take away the power over the world from the bright Olympian gods. They entered into battle with the gods on the Phlegraean fields, located on the Chalcidice Peninsula in Pallene. The gods of Olympus did not frighten them. The mother of the giants, Gaia, gave them a healing remedy that made them invulnerable to the gods' weapons. Only a mortal could kill the giants. Gaia did not protect them from mortal weapons. Gaia searched the whole world for a healing herb that would protect the giants from mortal weapons. But Zeus forbade the goddesses, Eos, the dawn, Selene, the moon, and Helios, the radiant sun god, from shining their light, and cut the healing herb himself. Unafraid of death at the hands of the gods, the giants rushed into battle. The battle lasted a long time. The giants threw huge rocks and burning trunks of ancient trees at the gods. The thunder of battle echoed throughout the world. Finally, Hercules appeared with Athena Pallas. The bowstring of Zeus's son's formidable bow rang out. An arrow, dipped in the poison of the Lernaean Hydra, flashed and pierced the chest of the mightiest of the giants, Alcyoneus. The giant fell to the ground. Death could not touch him on Pallene, for here he was immortal. After falling to the ground, he rose again after a while, even more powerful than before. Hercules quickly hoisted him onto his shoulders and carried him away from Pallene. The giant died outside its borders. After the death of Alcyoneus, the giant Porphyrion attacked Heracles and Hera, tore off Hera's veil, and was about to seize her. But Zeus struck him down with his lightning bolt, and Heracles killed him with his arrow. Apollo pierced the left eye of the giant Ephialtes with his golden arrow, and Heracles killed him by shooting him in the right eye. Dionysus struck down the giant Eurytus with his thyrsus, and Hephaestus killed the giant Clytius by throwing a whole block of red-hot iron at him. Athena Pallas threw the entire island of Sicily onto the fleeing giant Enceladus. The giant Polybotus, fleeing by sea from the pursuit of the formidable earthshaker Poseidon, fled to the island of Kos. Poseidon broke off part of Kos with his trident and threw it onto Polybotus. This is how the island of Nisseros was formed. Hermes defeated the giant Hippolytus, Artemis defeated Gratian, and the great Moirai defeated the giants Agrius and Foon, who fought with copper clubs. All the other giants were slain by Zeus, the thunderer, with his flashing lightning. But the great Heracles sent death to them all with his unerring arrows. The death of Heracles and his acceptance into the assembly of the Olympian gods. Based on Sophocles' tragedy, the Trachenia, when Hercules was sold into slavery to Omphale for killing Iphitus, Deianira and her children had to leave Tiryns. The wife of Hercules was given shelter by King Caïque of the Thessalian city of Trachis. 3 years and 3 months had passed since Hercules left Deianira. Hercules' wife was worried about her husband's fate. There was no news from Hercules. Deianira did not even know if her husband was still alive. Deianira was tormented by dark forebodings. She called her son Jill and said to him, "Oh, my beloved son, "It is a shame that you are not looking for your father. It has been 15 months since he last gave any news of himself." "If rumors are to be believed," Gil replied to his mother, "they say that after spending 3 years as a slave to Omphale, when his term of slavery ended, he went with an army to Euboea, to the city of Oechalia, to take revenge on King Eurytus for the insult." "My son," interrupted Jill's mother, "your father, Heracles, has never left me before, setting off on great deeds in such distress as he was last time. He even left me a tablet with an old prophecy written on it, given to him in Dodona. It says that if Hercules stays in a foreign land for 3 years and 3 months, he will either die or, upon returning home, lead a happy and peaceful life. When he left me, Hercules also left me instructions that, in the event of his death, his children should inherit his father's lands. I am worried about my husband's fate. He told me about the siege of Oechalia, that he would either die under the city or, having taken it, live happily. No, my son, go, I beg you, find your father." Gil, obedient to his mother's will, set off on a long journey to Euboea, to Oechalia, to search for his father. Some time after Gil left Trachis, a messenger came to Deianira. He informed her that Lycus, an envoy from Heracles, was on his way. Lycus brings joyful news. Hercules is alive. He defeated Eurytus, captured and destroyed the city of Oechalia, and will soon return to Trachis in triumph. Lycus follows the messenger to Deianira. He brings prisoners with him, including Iola, the daughter of Eurytus. Deianira joyfully greets Lycus. Heracles' envoy tells her that Heracles is still powerful and healthy. He is going to celebrate his victory and is preparing to make rich sacrifices before leaving Euboea. Deianira looks at the prisoners. Noticing a beautiful woman among them, she asks Lycus, "Tell me, Lycus, who is this woman? Who are her father and mother? She grieves more than anyone else. Is she not the daughter of Eurytus himself?" But Lycus replies to Heracles' wife, "I do not know who she is, Queen. This woman probably belongs to a noble Euboean family. She has not said a word during the journey. She has been shedding tears of grief ever since she left her native city." "Poor thing," exclaimed Deianira. "I will not add to your grief. Take the captives to the palace, Lycus, and I will follow you." Lycus left with the captives for the palace. As soon as he was gone, a servant approached Deianira and said to her, "Wait, Queen, listen to me. Lycus did not tell you the whole truth. He knows who this woman is. She is Eurytus' daughter, Iola. Out of love for her, Hercules once competed with Eurytus in archery. The proud king did not give his daughter to the victor as his wife, as he had promised, but insulted him and drove the great hero out of the city. For the sake of Iole, Hercules took Oechalia and killed King Eurytus. The son of Zeus did not send Iole here as a slave. He wants to take her as his wife." Deianira was saddened. She reproaches Lycus for hiding the truth from her. Lycus confesses that Heracles, captivated by Iola's beauty, really wants to marry her. Deianira grieves. Heracles forgot her during their long separation. Now he loves another. What should she, the unfortunate woman, do? She loves the great son of Zeus and cannot give him to another. Heartbroken, Deianira remembers the blood that the centaur Nessus once gave her, and what he said to her before he died. Deianira decides to resort to the centaur's blood. After all, he had told her, "Rub my blood on Heracles' clothes, and he will love you forever. No woman will be dearer to him than you." Deianira is afraid to resort to magic, but her love for Heracles and her fear of losing him finally overcome her fears. She takes out the blood of Nessus, which she has kept for so long in a vessel, so that no ray of sunlight would fall on it, and no fire in the hearth would warm it. Deianira rubs it on the luxurious cloak she wove as a gift for Heracles, puts it in a tightly closed box, calls Lycus, and says to him, "Hurry, Lycus, to Euboea, and take this box to Hercules. There is a cloak in it. Let Hercules wear this cloak when he offers a sacrifice to Zeus. Tell him that no mortal should wear this cloak except him, that even the rays of bright Helios should not touch the cloak before he puts it on. Hurry, Lycus." Lycus left with the cloak. After he left, Deianira was overcome with anxiety. She went to the palace and, to her horror, saw that the wool she had rubbed on the cloak with Nessus's blood had decayed. Deianira threw the wool on the floor. A ray of sunlight fell on the wool and warmed the centaur's blood, which was poisoned by the Lernaean Hydra. Along with the blood, the Hydra's poison heated up and turned the wool to ash, and poisonous foam appeared on the floor where the wool had been lying. Deianira was terrified. She feared that Hercules would die if he put on the poisoned cloak. Hercules' wife was increasingly tormented by a premonition of irreparable disaster. A little time had passed since Lycus left for Euboea with the poisoned cloak. Gil, who had returned to Trachis, entered the palace. He was pale, his eyes full of tears. Looking at his mother, he exclaimed, "Oh, how I wish I could see one of three things. Either that you were not alive, or that someone else called you mother instead of me, or that you had a better mind than you do now. Know that you have destroyed your own husband, my father." "Oh, woe is me!" Deianira exclaimed in horror. "What are you saying, my son? Who told you this? How can you accuse me of such a crime? I saw my father's suffering myself. I did not learn it from others." Gil tells his mother what happened on Mount Canion, near the city of Oichalia. Hercules, having erected an altar, was preparing to offer sacrifices to the gods, and first of all to his father Zeus, when Lycus arrived with a cloak. The son of Zeus put on the cloak, a gift from his wife, and proceeded with the sacrifice. First, he sacrificed 12 select bulls to Zeus, and in total, the hero sacrificed 100 victims to the Olympian gods. The flames on the altars blazed brightly. Hercules stood with his hands reverently raised to the sky, calling upon the gods. The fire burning hot on the altars warmed Heracles' body, and sweat broke out on his skin. Suddenly, the poisoned cloak stuck to the hero's body. Convulsions ran through Heracles' body. He felt terrible pain. Suffering terribly, the hero called out to Lycus and asked him why he had brought this cloak. What could the innocent Lycus answer? He could only say that Deianira had sent him with the cloak. Hercules, unaware of anything because of the terrible pain, grabbed Lycus by the leg and threw him against a rock surrounded by crashing waves. Lycus was killed instantly. Hercules fell to the ground. He writhed in unspeakable agony. His cries could be heard far across Euboea. Hercules cursed his marriage to Deianira. The great hero called his son and said to him with a heavy groan, "O my son, do not leave me in my misfortune. Even if death threatens you, do not leave me. Lift me up. Carry me away from here. Carry me away to where no mortal can see me. Oh, if you feel compassion for me, do not let me die here." They lifted Hercules, laid him on a stretcher, and carried him to the ship to take him to Trachis. This is what Gil told his mother, and he ended the story with these words: "Now you will all see the great son of Zeus here, perhaps still alive, perhaps already dead. Oh, may the harsh Erinyes and the avenging Dike punish you, mother. You have destroyed the best of men that the earth has ever borne. You will never see such a hero again." Deianira left silently for the palace, without saying a word. There, in the palace, she grabbed a double-edged sword. The old nurse saw Deianira. She quickly called Gil. Gil rushed to his mother, but she had already pierced her chest with the sword. The unfortunate son rushed to his mother with loud cries, embracing her and covering her cold body with kisses. At that moment, the dying Hercules was brought to the palace. He had fallen asleep on the way, but when the stretcher was lowered to the ground at the entrance to the palace, Hercules awoke. The great hero was unconscious from the terrible pain. "Oh, great Zeus," he exclaimed, "what country am I in? Oh, where are you, men of Greece? Help me! For your sake, I cleansed the land and sea of monsters and evil. But now none of you want to relieve me of my heavy suffering with biker or a sharp sword. O brother of Zeus, great Hades, put me to sleep. Put me, the unfortunate one, to sleep with swift death." "Father, hear me, I beg you," Gil pleads with tears. "My mother committed this evil deed unwittingly. Why do you thirst for revenge? When she learned that she herself was the cause of your death, she pierced her heart with the tip of a sword. O gods, she died, and I could not avenge her. It was not by my hand that the treacherous Deianira perished. Father, she is not to blame," says Gil. When she saw Iolaus, the daughter of Eurytus, in her house, my mother wanted to use magic to win back your love. She rubbed your cloak with the blood of Nessus, the centaur you had killed with your arrow, not knowing that this blood was poisoned by the Lernaean Hydra. "Oh, woe, woe," exclaims Hercules. "So this is how the prophecy of my father, Zeus, came true. He told me that I would not die by the hand of a living person, that I was destined to perish by the machinations of those who had descended into the dark kingdom of Hades. This is how Nessus, whom I slew, destroyed me. So this is the peace that the oracle at Dodona promised me, the peace of death. Yes, it is true. The dead have no worries. Grant me my last wish, Gil. Take me with my faithful friends to the high Oeta. Build a funeral pyre on its summit. Lay me on the pyre and set it alight. Do it quickly. Put an end to my suffering." "Oh, have mercy, Father. Are you really forcing me to be your murderer?" Gil begs his father. "No, you will not be a murderer, but the healer of my suffering. I have one more wish. Grant it," Hercules asks his son. "Take Eurytus' daughter, Iola, as your wife. But Jill refuses to fulfill his father's request and says, "No, father, I cannot take as my wife the one who was responsible for my mother's death. Oh, submit to my will, Jill. Do not stir up my dormant suffering again. Let me die in peace." Heracles implores his son insistently. Jill relented and obediently replied to his father, "All right, father, I will obey your dying wish." Hercules urged his son to hurry and fulfill his last request. "Hurry, my son, hurry, and lay me on the pyre before these unbearable torments begin again. Carry me. Farewell, Gil." Hercules' friends and Gil lifted the stretcher and carried Hercules to the high Oeta. There they built a huge pyre and laid the greatest of heroes on it. Hercules' suffering grows stronger and stronger, the poison of the Lernaean Hydra penetrating deeper and deeper into his body. Hercules tears off his poisoned cloak, which is stuck tightly to his body. Along with the cloak, Hercules tears off pieces of skin, and the terrible torment becomes even more unbearable. The only salvation from these superhuman torments is death. It is easier to perish in the flames of a fire than to endure them, but none of the hero's friends dare to light the fire. Finally, Philoctetes came to Oeta, and Hercules persuaded him to light the fire, and as a reward gave him his bow and arrows, poisoned with the venom of the Hydra. Philoctetes lit the fire, and the flames blazed brightly, but Zeus's lightning flashed even brighter. Thunder rolled across the sky. Athena Pallas and Hermes arrived at the pyre in a golden chariot and carried the greatest of heroes, Hercules, up to the bright Olympus. There he was met by the great gods. Heracles became an immortal god. Hera herself, forgetting her hatred, gave Heracles her daughter, the eternally young goddess Hebe, as his wife. Since then, Heracles has lived on bright Olympus among the great immortal gods. This was his reward for all his great deeds on earth, for all his great sufferings. Heracles. Based on Euripides' tragedy, Heracles. After Heracles' death, his children and his mother Alcmene lived in Tiryns with Heracles' eldest son, Hylas. They did not live there long. Out of hatred for Heracles, Eurystheus drove the children of the greatest hero from their father's domain and pursued them wherever they tried to hide. Heracles' children wandered throughout Greece for a long time. Finally, the elderly Iolaus, Heracles' nephew and friend, took them in. But Eurystheus' hatred caught up with the unfortunate children, and they had to flee with Iolaus to Athens, where Theseus' son Demophon ruled at that time. Upon learning that Heracles' children had taken refuge in Athens, Eurystheus sent his messenger Copreus to demand that Demophon hand over the Heraclidae. Demophon refused Copreus, undeterred by the threat that Eurystheus would attack Athens with a large army and destroy the city. Demophon did not want to violate the custom of hospitality. Soon, Eurystheus invaded Attica with a large army. The Athenians faced a battle with numerous enemies. They asked the gods about the outcome of the battle, and the gods revealed to them that the Athenians would only win if a girl was sacrificed to the gods. Macaria, the eldest daughter of Heracles and Deianira, voluntarily offered herself as a sacrifice to the gods, deciding to sacrifice her life to save her brothers and sisters. The two armies met on the battlefield. and Jill arrived with a detachment of warriors. He found help against Eurystheus. Before the battle began, Macaria was sacrificed. The battle was fierce and bloody. The Athenians were victorious. Eurystheus fled, and Gil rushed in his chariot to pursue his father's enemy. Iolaus saw this. He begged Gil to give him the chariot. The elderly comrade of Heracles himself wanted to avenge all the misfortunes that Eurystheus had caused his friend. Iolaus quickly rushed after him in the chariot. He had almost caught up with Eurystheus. Then Iolaus prayed to the Olympian gods. He begged them to give him back his youth and his former strength for just one day. The gods heard Iolaus's plea. 2 bright stars fell from the sky, and a dark cloud descended on Iolaus's chariot. When the cloud parted, Iolaus stood on the chariot in all the splendor of his youth, mighty and beautiful. Iolaus caught up with Eurystheus and captured him. Iolaus triumphantly brought the bound Eurystheus to Athens. Heracles' mother, Alcmene, flew into a rage when she saw the enemy of her great son. Despite the attempts of Eurystheus, Jill, and Demophon to protect him, Alcmene tore out Eurystheus's eyes with her own hands and killed him. Thus, Eurystheus perished. The Athenians did not leave their defeated enemy unburied. He was buried in Attica, near the sanctuary of Pellenian Athena. Thank you for listening. Heracles' journey reminds us that strength is not only in the body, but in courage, endurance, and the will to rise again. If this story helped you relax or fall asleep, I hope you'll join us again. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next part of our Greek myth series, with more gods, heroes, and ancient wisdom still to come. Wishing you a peaceful night. Until next time.